Let's be real, scrappy blankets are not for everyone, and even if you do love them, realistically, how many can you make? Luckily, there are tons of options for yarn leftovers of any amount, and I have 10 great ideas to share with you today. Hey everyone, it's Natalie, also known as Knitty Natty. Today I'm also joined by my buddy Toaster. So I have set out on a mission to either use or donate all of my scrap yarns and mini skeins in the first 6 months of the year. So a few weeks ago, I started out on this journey and I shared in my first video all about me getting organized, getting all my scraps out, and figuring out what I'm gonna keep and what I'm going to give away. Then in part 2, last week's video, I shared all of the projects that I'm going to be working on in the first 6 months of the year. Now, while all of those projects are great, they are longer term projects and use a lot of scrap yarn. Really, they use a lot of mini skeins, and that's just not always everyone's taste. Plus, even when you do make a scrappy project, it seems like you always have leftovers of those leftovers. So we needed to dive in and find more projects for those little tiny bits of scraps. Real quick before we begin, most of these projects are going to be centered around fingering weight scrap yarns. However, some of them are for DK weight, so you can hold your fingering weight yarn double and still achieve the same thing. I also highly recommend coming up with a system for your leftover yarns where you can sort things out as you finish things. You'll need a scale to weigh your yarn and then containers. Something as simple as Ziploc bags with a Sharpie to label them works perfectly. After watching everything through, I would love for you to share how you use up your scraps as well down in the comments below so we can just have a big, juicy, rich resource here on the internet for everyone that is using up scraps. I think we're ready, so let's get into those ideas. Number 1, you can save your leftover yarns for future heels and toes on socks. This is really great for any scraps that are 20 to 30 grams because you need about 20 grams in order to do either 2 heels and 2 toes or 2 cuffs and 2 heels. If you like to do heels, toes, and cuffs, you may want to consider saving things that are more on the 30 gram size, and you can always test this out for yourself by taking a larger scrap. Maybe you have something that's 40 grams, weighing it, making your socks with heels, toes, and cuffs, and then weighing it after and see how much you need. I don't actually do this myself, but I think it would be a really good idea to then add that into the notes on either your notebook that you keep track of your projects, your Ravelry page, or just a note in your phone so that you always know how many grams you need for heels, toes, and cuffs. So I think this is fun to do for neutrals because here I have a sparkly gray that I used for 2 different socks, and then also a nice brown on this one. You can even do more fun things like add stripes at the beginning or at the end, but I also love this with a pop of color, oops, like I have here on these 2 socks, a really nice bright pink. And this one I decided to go even more creative with and get some pinks and bright greens on the cuff and the toe. You can get really super creative with this, which is what's so much fun, and you really don't need a lot of yarn to do it. The only thing I would say is I like to go more towards a solid yarn for heels, toes, and cuffs, and then just create a space where you can drop these yarns in once you're finished with the project, maybe a Ziploc bag or a drawer somewhere in your yarn situation, whether it's a shelf or a closet or anything like that. Another fun sock idea is to swap yarns with another knitting friend. A lot of times when you finish knitting a sock, you have almost 50 grams remaining, which means that that's enough to knit another sock or at least a pair of shorties. I actually know people that will go as far as to say like, okay, there's this special skein, we have a shop update, let's just have one of us get it, we'll split it in half and then I'll send you the other half. And then the other friend will buy like the next shop update, same thing, split it in half, and then send it to their friend. You don't have to swap in order to do this. You could also destash it, but I found that shorty socks especially really don't take a lot of yarn, and you can just go and weigh your own sock and see how much it takes. And these don't even have any contrasting heels, toes, and cuffs, and they're decently long, and they only took like 52 grams. So if you replace the heels, toes, and cuffs with another contrasting color, then you can definitely get a pair of socks out of 50 grams or less. Option number 3 is the Magic Knot Ball, or sometimes called the Magic Yarn Ball. Now this one does lean a little more towards a blanket. I promise it's the only one, but it's not the only thing you can do with a Magic Knot Ball. And at first, it's obviously just a ball of yarn. It's not anything else. What is so great about this option is that you can literally do this with any yarn weight. I would just stay consistent throughout the ball, and you can use up any amount of scraps that you have. So this is perfect for those little itsy bitsy bits of leftovers after you've maybe used the yarn for a project, then used it in a scrappy project, then used it for something else, and you're like, I just don't want to toss this yarn, but I just don't want to do anything else with it right now either. You tie it into your Magic Knot Ball, and it is a beautiful thing. So what this is I have been adding scraps to this for a while. This is definitely more than 100 grams now, and you do it with a technique called the Magic Knot. I'm gonna link the Crazy Sock Lady's tutorial on how to make a Magic Knot Ball because hers is really, really great. So after you've been collecting this for a while, what do you do with it? So you can definitely make things other than blankets, but blankets tend to be really, really good here. A really fun one I think would be the Cozy Comfort Throw. You hold your yarn with another yarn, so maybe holding something like this where you've got all kinds of colors with a neutral would really blend it together, and it's just an easy garter stitch blanket that you could add more yarn to at any point in time. And then another great option would be a corner-to-corner crochet blanket. I think the colors would just blend and add in perfectly throughout. I've seen some people do that with the Magic Knot Ball as well. Another option is you could throw this together with maybe a mohair or a suri to really soften it and blend the colors together, whether you choose to make a blanket or a shawl, or maybe you get really wild and decide to make a sweater. The options are endless with these Magic Knot Balls, and they are so much fun to make. Another really fun option is just to go purely into the Scrappy Sock project realm. There are so many fun patterns for these, and I'm going to be dropping them pretty quickly. So just know that the links are also down below, so you can find everything also after this video. So for most Scrappy Sock patterns, you're going to need anywhere from 10 to 20 grams per color, and they will need to add up to a total of maybe about 60, 70 to 100 grams in total, just depending on what you actually need for your socks. So one option here is one of my patterns. These are the Scraptastic socks. They're really fun to make. You need 10 grams each of 8 to 10 colors. If you want something a little more blended, this is the Scraptastic Luxe sock. It has a fun little cable on the side, and you hold your colors with mohair. Again, that really helps to blend things. For this one, you'll need 20 grams each of 5 colors plus 50 grams of mohair. Another one is actually the socks that I just happen to be wearing today, like really coincidentally. These are the Sweetheart socks, and you will need really small amounts of each of these colors for the color work, as well as about 60 grams of your main color. So any type of color work socks work really, really great to use up those leftover bits. I also saw that Andrea Mowry has a beautiful pattern called Fluorite. They're toe up, so you can just keep on adding and adding scraps for as much as you want. And she updated the pattern so that there is a boot and a knee length option. So again, you could just add scraps until you are finished. It says you'll need 1 skein each of a bunch of different colors, but with any scrappy projects, it's really easy to adjust things and just get to the total amount and change colors more often. One more I have is the Color Palette socks. This pattern is by Laura Muratz, and you'll need less than 20 grams of each, and like not a ton. I can't remember exactly how much you need of the main color, but they were very, very fun to make. Also really good for those mini skein bundles that go together that you're not really sure what to do with. And then I think saw this on Instagram yesterday. These are the Rainbow Fade Shorties by Shelly Diaz. You'll need 10 grams each of 6 colors, and it is a free pattern. By the way, whenever you're making a scrappy project, especially socks, one thing that always turned me off from them before is that I didn't want to weave in all of these different ends. So I would highly suggest learning how to knit over your ends. That way, every time you change a color, you can just knit over it and you don't have to weave in all of those at the end. I'll make sure to link my tutorial for knitting over ends down below with all of these beautiful patterns. This is the last sock scrappy option, I promise, but I think it's a really good one because at first glance, it doesn't look like a scrappy project at all. These are helical knit socks, and it's a really fun way to take 2 50-gram leftovers, pair them together, and use them in a sock. Now, I'm talking about the 2 colors that are actually in this main part of it. And these are 2 colors that were very close to each other, so you really can't even tell that it's scrappy at all. Of course, there's the addition of these yarns, which I believe were also leftovers for me, so I'm not including that as part of this new idea. So this is really fun for 2 leftovers that you have on your own, either that go together well, like this one, where they're very, very similar, or they are very contrasting, in which you would get really skinny stripes. Helical knitting is a 1-row striping method. I've got a tutorial on how to do that, but I also have a full tutorial on how I knit these socks, and it's a really quick one too, so it's really easy to grasp that concept. Just get an idea of what helical socks look like. And then going back to one of the ideas earlier in the video, if you do find a friend to maybe exchange yarns with, it could be really fun to add your 2 colors together and make a pair of socks. So what I love about this is that you could make a pair of socks in one color, make a pair of socks in the other color, and then with the leftovers, make a whole new pair of socks, striping them with helical knitting. It's just started snowing here in New York City, which is so fun. And we are halfway through all of these ideas, so I feel like it's a mood here in New York City. So number 6 is yarn cozies, and actually I have some other cozies to share with you as well. So these are my yarn cozy pattern, and there are several different versions, but what is so fun about them is I feel like this is a way to really create a project where you can appreciate a yarn again and again, because it's something that you may use on a daily basis. At least I know that I do. So what is a yarn cozy? Basically, it's this little knitted sleeve, or I also have crocheted ones that fit around your yarn and help the yarn cake not just totally come apart. So you can see I've used a good bit of this 100-gram fingering weight yarn, and my cozy is helping it stay all nice and tidy in my project bag. And then I also have been using them for my socks. I've got a 50-gram and a 20-gram one here, which are just available in the knitted version for right now. I have big plans to keep adding to them. So for these knitted ones, let's see, I've got my notes here. You'll need 20 grams for the full size. And then for these smaller ones, you'll need about 10 to 15 grams. And again, it's really fun. Like, I remember this yarn so fondly and how much I loved using the yarn in the project that I didn't want it to get kind of overshadowed in a scrappy project where there's a bunch of other colors going on. So now I get to see and enjoy this yarn all of the time. Now for these crocheted versions, for the one that's just a simple single crochet, I call this one the classic, you'll need 20 grams. And for the ribbed one, it takes a little more yarn, about 30 grams. So again, just perfect for those special leftovers or even self-striping yarns. It's kind of hard to figure out what to do with those. They really show up beautifully in these yarn cozies. I don't just have yarn cozies. I'm cozy obsessed, in case you can't tell. I've also got, and these are really fun as gifts, so a great way to use your leftovers and as a gift for the non knitter. I've got these different can and bottle cozies. So they started out as just a way to have your team colors on here, but I really found they're a fun way to show off like my favorite leftovers. So I've got a version for just a regular can. I've got a version for a skinny can. Again, another fun way to use stripes. And then a version for a bottle that also all of these double as a coaster, which is just a win-win. Number 7 is a bit different from our other ideas, and this is to use your scrap yarns as decoration. So I really love this option, and it can actually be a temporary solution or just a holding place for any yarn scraps that you're planning to use for something else. So if you're setting aside a bunch of yarn scraps for maybe a blanket or for heels and toes, why not take the opportunity to display that? I used to have a big glass bowl that I got at a home goods store that I would just immediately, any scraps that I had would just get tossed right into there. So not only was it serving me a purpose of storing those items and sorting those items, but I also got to see and enjoy it every single day. You could definitely find something maybe at your home goods store or at a local secondhand store, or you probably have like an extra vase or something lying around your house that you could grab and use. I really love this option, and whether you choose to make it more permanent by being very selective about the yarns you put in, maybe winding them all so that they're the same size and just having that as like a beautiful display, or as a temporary storage solution, I think it's a really fun one and can brighten up any room. Option number 8 is to collect yarns in 10 and 20 gram amounts and save it for later to maybe swap or give away. I have been keeping yarns like this in this bag for well over 2 years, and trust me, it has come in handy. You may just want to keep them and collect them and say like, this bag, this is the yarns that I've already used. So what I like to do is I'll use my scraps in all of the different projects that I have going on. And then when I'm done with them and I still have a ton left over, I'm just done. I'm not gonna use it for anything else. So that's where I will wind off 20 grams and I will write down all of the information on these craft paper bags that I got from just like a craft store and I will put it away for later. So that way, right when I'm done, everything's taken care of. I still know exactly what that yarn is, but then later on, I have it ready to swap. This really comes in handy, especially if you're in a group setting where people are knitters or crocheters. In the Love and Stitches membership, at the end of the past 2 years, we've done a sort of Advent scrappy swap where we swap yarns in 10 gram or 20 gram amounts. So it's just nice to have a process for all throughout the year, collecting these things and having them ready to go. I've got 2 really fun pattern suggestions for these last 2 options, and number 9 is coasters. I found a ton of different really fun coasters that I think would make the perfect like sets or just even a singular coaster somewhere for you in your house where you can think about knitting or crochet even when you're not knitting or crocheting, or hey, take it into the office. How fun would that be? So option number 1 for a crochet option would be a granny square. This one is my Scrappy Granny pattern, which is free. I've got a tutorial on how to do it. I have made a bunch of these squares because I'm making a blanket, but this is not a blanket video. So if you wanted to make them individually, they take 8 grams of fingering weight yarn, and you could certainly do this with any weight of yarn. You just need to adjust your hook size and adjust the amount of rounds that you do to create your desired size. So really fun, really easy, and just a great way you could create a whole little set. You could also give these as lovely little gifts, and they are super duper quick to make. There's also these things called mug rugs. If you look up on Ravelry, the mug rug search will give you a bunch of different coaster options. And what sets a mug rug apart, at least what I found, is that they are perfect for scraps because they include fringe as you go. So you either knit or crochet across, cut your yarn, and then go back across, cut your yarn. So even if you have the littlest itsy bitsy bits of yarn, you could just work your way across and then be at the end of your scrap, work your way across, be at the end of your scrap, and at the end, you don't need to weave in any ends, you just turn this into fringe. I feel like that makes the perfect scrappy project. So there's a crochet version that I will link down below that's just called a mug rug. I really couldn't find a good knitted version. I feel like we need one out there because this would be easy to do in maybe garter stitch or linen stitch and just again leave those ends on the side. And then in a different direction, if you're just looking for a fun like coaster or mug rug to make, but you want it to be a little more of a challenge, Kay, the Crazy Sock Lady, has made these beautiful mitered squares where it's 4 mitered squares put together and an I-cord border. I think that the tutorial I'm gonna link for this is actually just a tutorial on how to do a blanket, but I don't see why you couldn't just use that as a beautiful large coaster, especially for like a large coffee cup. And then the last one, there's a really fun brioche version from Leslie Ann Robinson called the Deco Mug Mat. It uses 37 yards of DK. So if you doubled up your fingering weight scraps, you would be able to create DK weight yarn, and 37 yards of DK doubled up as 80 yards of fingering, and that's usually the amount of yarn in a 20-gram mini skein. So if you've got a beautiful mini skein lying around, you want to do some brioche or practice some brioche, that could be a really fun option as well. My last suggestion for you is a really fun pattern that just came out this month. So it's brand new, hot off the market, and super duper cute. It is called the Solid Scrappy Granny Pillow by Mallory Crawl. It is a free pattern on their blog, but you can also purchase the PDF. I'm guessing it's like an ad-free version, but I really like that when patterns have that option, because then what I like to do is go check the pattern out first on the blog, and then I buy the pattern so that I can support the maker and also have something that's easy for me to read. That's the way that I like to do things. But it also makes it accessible for many, many people. So this pattern is in 2 versions, I believe, a DK weight version and a worsted weight version. But again, you could still use fingering weight if you hold it double, and that will equal DK weight. So you're getting to use up your fingering weight scraps even faster. It looks like there's tons of different granny squares on here, or some type of square. I don't know if it's a granny square. And so I feel like this would be a great way to use up those beautiful sets of advent yarns that you're not sure what to do with. Again, if you double it up, you're getting to use it twice as fast, and you have a really fun, beautiful pillow that maybe will fit into your home decor, or it could be really cute to keep around your craft area. It felt like the only right way to end this video is with the snow in the background. I'm not 100% sure if you can see it, but it has really started to come down and maybe turn into a little bit of rain, which is so exciting. I hope that you found a fun pattern idea in this video for your scraps, or maybe it prompted you to come up with something else. So please, if you have any ideas you want to add on, leave them in the comments below. And then if you've watched this video, go look through the comments. I'm sure you're gonna find something amazing to make. If you haven't already, parts 1 and 2 of my Scrap Free 2023 journey are already filmed and they are out, and I will link them down below so you can follow along. And then I'm going to be sharing everything else throughout my podcast, which comes out each Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.